Thunderbirds a go. I've been watching Joe 90 this week.
Yeah, cool.
We can talk about that in after hours.
Yeah.
You did tell me you watched that as a kid, right? Joe
I
90?
did. Loved it.
Yeah. And it's on YouTube. I showed Fox the first episode yesterday. I think he kind of liked it.
Okay.
Anyway, this is QAV, not Joe 90. We'll talk about Joe 90 later. Welcome back, TK. How's your week been?
Yeah, good. Busy. Lots of stuff going on. It's been good.
Like what?
I was talking to you before about going down and watching the golf at the National, which was good fun, a really relaxed tournament, so you could walk up and follow the players and walk in between them, and which is very unusual for a golf tournament. So that was good. Had a horse racing at Flemington on Saturday, perfect race in the last race, and I think finished 5th, but it was a good run. First up, too short, but hit the line hard, so that was good. Had a chat with the jockey afterwards. She was interesting. She's an apprentice at Lindsay Park, and I was chatting with the trainer, and he said, just be careful what you say to her because she's a boxing champion. So it's a little pint-sized lady who has turned from boxing to being a jockey. That was interesting to meet her.
Do you have a reputation with the female jockeys that they need to tell you to be careful, Tony?
No, I've got an advantage because they're usually about 4'5" or something. So.
What are you, 6'3"?
6'4", yeah.
6'4".
Yeah, anyway. And Alex had her first auction where she's working at Gibson's auction house. So I went up there a couple of times during the week and had a look around. She showed me around and she was chuffed, and it was great fun. And,
where's their auction house? Where's their place based?
High Street, Armadale in Melbourne.
That's right. I used to live there.
Yeah, we used to live around the corner.
Street.
Denby Road.
Very good. We have had a busy week.
I have, yeah. I'm heading up again to Melbourne tonight to take Jenny up for she's got a flight early tomorrow. She's going up to the Hunter Valley for a board retreat for one of the companies she's a director of. And, and then it's my birthday on Friday, so we're having a dinner in Melbourne for it. So I'd slip that in.
I knew that. I've got something on its way to you, a little gift.
Oh, thank you.
It probably arrived without a name because I bought it online and there's no card or anything. But when it arrives, you'll know. When something turns up that doesn't have a name on it, you'll know it's from me. And then we can talk about it next week.
Okay, thank you. So just out of interest, where have you sent it without naming addresses? Suburbs?
Shank.
Okay. All right, good.
Why?
Oh, because our mailbox is at the end of the street, and they often take parcels back to the post office. But I'll go and check it and
okay,
and go and collect it. That's fine. But I often don't check the mail down here.
Right.
Yeah,
I did wonder if it would get to you, but we'll see.
We'll see. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So it's 62.
2. Yes.
62. You don't look a day over 61 yet.
That's because I'm not. It's on Friday.
Yeah. Well, let's talk next week. See how you're looking. How's your health? Had your health? You had a check-up lately?
No.
How do you know it's good then?
Doctor. Because I know I feel good. Yeah. Oh. I haven't found a doctor down here yet. That's my next thing to do. Go and get my prescriptions renewed from someone local.
Get your check-up. Get your annual bloods done.
Yeah, they're not due yet for another 3 or 4 months.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's talk about this.
Not much going on in the stock market at the moment, is there?
No, nothing going on. It's been quiet.
It's like watching a roller coaster train wreck. Ever since Trump was elected. Man, like a car crash at the Speedway.
Yeah. Just absolute craziness. And as we talked about last week, I think tomorrow, or the 2nd in the US, is Independence Day, Trump calls it. They're calling it Peak Fear Day. We'll see what's going to happen. But
he's
meanwhile...
it Freedom Day, isn't he?
Oh, freedom.
Yeah.
Okay.
As if America's enslaved somehow.
Yeah. They're getting... Poor America. Like, they've had it so tough. Since World War II. Just people picking on them. Left, right, and centre. I wanted to start by letting where of mine. Oh, yeah, that the light group of portfolios is now beating the index since inception, and also for the financial year. It had a rough start. Started just as the Ukraine war started, and it's a couple of the portfolios have been doing better than the index. A couple were way behind. One of them still is a bit behind, the first one, but it's caught up a lot. But as of this morning when I checked, since inception, the light group of portfolios was up 8.3% per annum versus the index up 8% per annum. So there's a bit of a milestone for me. The light portfolios have finally, after a few years, caught up. It's been about 3 years, really.
And we should explain there's 4 portfolios started at different times to give people plenty of options to track the one that sort of matches them best.
Yeah, they started sort of 4 or 5 months apart. And for the current financial year, the light group is up 9.4% per annum versus the index up 4% per annum. So the index has been going backwards for the last, month or so, but the light portfolios have been going from strength to strength, which is nice to see. I did have to sell a couple of stocks today. EHL, it was one of them. I think TPG was the other one. But nice to see that the light group is starting to stabilise and find its legs. And it's like we talked about a few weeks ago, I think it's just got enough stocks in it now that have got enough wind in their sails that it's sort of broken through a lot of the early struggles that it had with Rule 1 and 3PTL, death marches, death spirals.
I think you're right. And I did some research into the difference between the light portfolios and the dummy portfolio. I just think it's time. It's once they get their feet under the desk and do a bit of churning, and then the stocks which are going to last and keep going up get established. That's when things start to turn around for these portfolios. Speaking
of stocks not having their legs underneath them, RIP to the reject shop. It's been on and off our buy list since we started the show. Did very well during COVID, I seem to recall. It was one of the dummy portfolio's big winners during COVID for a while there, when everyone was going into the reject shop to buy toilet paper or whatever the hell they were buying during COVID. Dollarama has snapped up the reject shop for $259 million. Canadian value retailer Dollarama is to acquire the reject shop in a deal valuing the latter's shares at 112% premium. Now, just a warning for people who see TRS on the buy list this week, because it did pop up back on the buy list. Just make a note that it's probably not going much further above the... It went from like $3.50 to $6.12, I think, which was the buy price or the acquisition price. So it looks good, but it won't stay there. So there's not a lot of upside. So that's another one gone.
Reject no more.
But that's a big premium, right? 112% premium. What do you make of that?
Oh, I haven't got my notes in front of me. I did dig it out, but I was surprised. I can't see any other natural bidder for the reject shop. If it was going to be picked up by like a Kmart or someone like that, I think it would have already been picked up. Who knows? It could spark another bid, but yeah, that was the question analysts in Canada were asking Dollarama. Let me just hang on for a sec. I'll see if I can find it in last week's notes. You talk for the people, and I'll just try and find it.
Well, yeah, like I would have expected that if there was a bidding war, normally you see a 10% premium or maybe a 20% premium on the current price. But for 112% premium, that seems exorbitant, and nothing that I read really seemed to explain it. They said that the board would unanimously recommend the deal to shareholders, subject to a recommendation by an independent expert. Kim Group, the retailer's largest shareholder, owning a 20.8% stake, intends to support the bid. But no real explanation that I could see for why they were being willing to pay through the nose for it. There was no mention of competing bids or anything like that. Wasn't in play from what I could tell. So I don't know. That was surprising to me. But if anyone did hold on to the TRS group when they should have sold it, when I did a year ago, congratulations. You've probably done very well. if you
I can't find it in my notes. Let me just keep talking. I'll find it. It'll be in an AFR article I read.
Well, I'll talk about something else while you do that. For people that have been testing Stockopedia, we did a US show last week, and Tony pointed out that he'd noticed there was a problem with the price to operating cash flow number that Stockopedia was giving us for one of the stocks I'd added, CX, to the US portfolio. And when I did some deeper analysis last week, I found that there was quite a lot of stocks that Stockopedia had a different price to operating cash flow, because they have a price to operating cash flow number built into their analysis that I've just been using. When I did a manual price to operating cash flow for all of those, there was probably about 30% of the stocks that I looked at in the US market had a really big differential, like a massive differential between their reported PropCAF and the PropCAF that I was calculating. So I emailed Elio D'Amato at Stockopedia and said, hey, can you explain this to me? And normally he gets back to me really quickly, and I hadn't heard from him by yesterday, like a week. So I did some digging and found out that he's gone, and Chris Batchelor's also gone. So the two guys that were running Stockopedia Australia are gone.
Wow.
And Phil Muscatello tells me they left late last year. So I reached out to Stockopedia's support line and said, is there anyone left in the Australian team? And got a reply back, no. There's no Australian team left, all gone. So now it's all based out of the UK, I think. And I asked the guy I was talking to about this problem with the PropCAF, and he said, I'll get someone in our development team to get in touch with you. So that's kind of concerning and disappointing, seeing as I've spent a year rejigging our checklists around Stockopedia. And the guys that I was relying on to be my point of contact there, that we have a relationship, particularly with Elio, that's gone back many, many years, are gone. So Phil Muscatello does have a relationship with the owner of Stockopedia. He's offered to connect me up with him, a guy by the name of Ed. So I might do that, reach out to Ed and see what his plans are for the Australian and the US market, obviously, because we're using it mostly there. But I know a lot of people in our Australian audience have expressed an interest in using Stockopedia instead of Stock Doctor. So we want to make sure that they're going to be a going entity here. I assume that they are, and they just couldn't justify the costs. Elio's salary here and Chris's salary for some reason. But anyway, maybe they just didn't grow as much here as they hoped it would.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So anyway,
if you reach out to Ed, who I've heard speak on podcasts before, he's an excellent interview subject if we can get him on.
Okay.
To go through the background of what he calls factor investing, which is the basis of Stockopedia.
Okay.
Yeah. I did find that article on Dollarama, but it doesn't really shed much light. It says, in a call with analysts, Rossi, who's the CEO of Dollarama, was questioned by Canadian brokers about the large takeover premium. The reject shop share price has fallen nearly 30% over the last year, and Dollarama already has significant expansion plans in Mexico through Dollar City, a discount retailer it controls. Rossi told the call that Dollarama intended to turn the reject shop into a more regular shop for consumables and outlined plans to almost double the business network to 700-odd stores by 2034, etc., etc. So it didn't really answer the question. Right. I had some experience with Dollarama in Canada. It's certainly well regarded over there. I think I might have gone into it once though, because it's like the reject shop here. It has a lot of sort of clearance merchandise. But Alex used to go there to pick up fancy dress costumes for Halloween or silly jumpers for Christmas, that kind of thing. So it was a bit of the retail landscape in Canada. If it's trying to expand to 700 odd stores though, and turn the reject shop into a more regular shop for consumables, to quote the CEO, I think they've got a tough road to hoe in Australia to do that, because a lot of retail analysts would say Australia is overshopped now anyway. There's a supermarket in most suburbs. Aldi's there at the low end of the market for price. So it's going to be hard to see the reject shop doubling it. I guess I'm not sure how many outlets it has in its network now, but 700 would be at least twice what it has. And then also to move into consumables, which puts it up in competition with Aldi, I would have thought. So interesting to see what happens.
It's my go-to place for Pringles. Fox loves Pringles, and Pringles at Coles or Woolies are like $6 for a can of Pringles, about $2 at the reject shop.
Okay.
So whenever he's
used by date,
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, he's 10.
Fox is young, he'll recover.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Yeah.
I read somewhere recently the guy who invented Pringles was cremated and requested his ashes be put in the Pringles can.
Fair enough.
Oh.
Yeah. Pringles are one of those things that I think if you buried them in a time safe and you dug them up 1,000 years from now, they'd be just as good. Like they're just
cockroaches
full of
the food industry.
Yeah. Yeah, after the nuclear war, it'll be Keith Richards and Pringles that will survive.
That's all we'll
and
have
Twinkies. Twinkies. A couple of other stories. I read, last week on the show we had Chairman Mab on and we were ripping into ASIC and the ASX. Well, ASIC have ripped into the ASX themselves this week. I read this in Capital Brief. Yeah. The Reserve Bank of Australia is reassessing ASX's compliance while the corporate regulator has directed the bourse to undertake a technical review of CHESS as they teamed up to express their concerns over the exchange's operational risks. The context: the two steps by the Central Bank and the Australian Securities and Investment Commission follow a CHESS batch settlement failure on the 20th of December 2024. In a joint letter to ASX, they said they were increasingly concerned and deeply disappointed over the management of operational risk at ASX. The RBA will reassess the compliance of ASX Clear and ASX Settlement with the RBA's financial stability standards outside the annual assessment cycle. Meanwhile, ASIC has directed ASX to engage an expert approved by the regulator to undertake a technical review of CHESS. The report is expected to be made public. So I think this is ASIC giving the ASX a please explain letter.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're not the only ones that have given the ASX a please explain letter on CHESS. I mean, it's been a debacle for the last 3 or 4 years at least.
Years this has been going on, right?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to when Elmer Funky Cooper used to run the place, and he thought replacing CHESS with a blockchain-based system was the way to go. And
what was his name?
Elmer Funky Cooper. Yeah.
Cooper.
Well, Funky Cupper, I think you pronounce it. Yeah.
Funky. Was that one name? Was his last name? Funky Cupper?
Yeah. He's Dutch.
Oh,
Used to work at ANZ with Jenny, so I met him a couple of times. But
right.
Yeah, FUNKE-KUPPER.
We were talking about Arrested Development before. That's Tobias Funke is David Cross's character's name. Tobias Funke. Anyway, yes, Funky Cooper.
Yep. Thought blockchain was the way to go. Didn't work out. Then ever since then, ASX CEOs have either been trying to make blockchain work or trying to think of a way to crater it and write off the $100 million plus that they've spent thus far. Meanwhile, we still get snail mail every quarter of our ASX CHESS transactions, which is a very old-fashioned way of doing it. Maybe ASX is keeping Australia Post alive, probably the only thing left that sends things through the mail. So yeah, the current CEO I don't think has worked out. I think she said they've ditched the blockchain, but hasn't come up with a replacement yet. And meanwhile, the current system is just creaking at the seams and needs to be patched up and fixed.
I just thought it was hilarious that last week we were saying, why isn't the ASX doing more to punish these companies that aren't doing continuous disclosure? And then a couple of days later, I read that ASIC are smacking ASX around for not being able to do their job properly. So, it's just
and I think that's the problem.
Clown show.
The rumours I'm hearing out of the ASX are that they are so focused on chess that nothing else is getting done properly. And chess isn't getting done properly, so nothing's getting done properly.
That's what Magnus Carlsen says too. Chess isn't being done properly. It's too easy. All right. Well, that's all I've got for now. I've got some other stuff later, but yeah, what have you got on your list of talking points, Tony?
Quite a few. Accent One, which has been on our buy list for quite a while as well, on and off. There's something funny going on with it. When I say funny, I mean it's possibly good for shareholders, but Fraser's Group, which is another retailer based in the UK, who own House of Fraser, which is kind of like a My department store from the UK.
Sorry, did you say Accent One, or do you mean the Accent Group?
Sorry, Accent Group. I think Accent Group, and what's their code? AX1, I think.
Right, as opposed to Access One, that's an IT company. Accent
Group. Yep.
Group. Okay.
AX1.
Like shoe company, right?
They are a shoe retailer, correct.
Yeah.
So Fraser's took a stake in them in August of last year. They bought 14.65%. And it was mentioned in the AFR last week, on Monday this week, that House of Fraser or Fraser's Group is looking to up their shareholding to 19.99, which puts them just under the threshold for launching a takeover of the company. No announcements come out yet, so not sure if it's just a rumour, but what's behind this? Well, Fraser's own Sports Direct, which is a large retailer from the UK selling sporting apparel, obviously. They're only available online so far in Australia, and it's part of this rumour is that Accent Group will help with the distribution, at least, of Sports Direct retail stores when they get established in Australia. So it's a bit of a watch this space, but a couple of things there. If Accent Group has a sub 20% cornerstone investor who's another retailer on as a shareholder, there could be a tie-up. It could lead to a bid at some stage. That's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is just what if Sports Direct does launch in Australia with a retail presence, just what that means for Rebel Sports. It's would be its main competitor, I think. So that's another watch this space for that stock, which has also been on and off the buy list over the years. So
Right.
one to watch. I was going to talk about New Hope Group last week when it released its profits as part of the profit roundup, because interestingly enough, their shares went up after their results, which were quite good. And this is from the AFR a couple of weeks ago following the results. New Hope shares soared almost 9% yesterday after Chief Executive Rob Bishop announced a $100 million share buyback, and said the sharp slump in coal prices in recent years had run its course. Bishop predicted coal prices would stabilise over the next few months after he delivered a 35% rise in New Hope's half-year profit to $340 million. The optimistic tone on coal prices and a bumper set of shareholder returns lifted New Hope shares almost 9%, 403 yesterday. Shareholders will also receive a 19-cent fully franked interim dividend on April 9, an increase from the 17-cent dividend paid in the same period last year. So it goes on to talk about that in detail. The interesting thing, I think, was that I think New Hope may have gone up, but it hasn't gone on with that price rise. I think coal is still a sell in the commodity checklist from memory.
Yeah.
But on every other metric, New Hope has been on the buy list. So on the off chance this guy's right, and you'd expect he would know a lot about the coal industry. And his main argument was that with coal fetching around $96 US a tonne, that price was meant that about 10 to 15% of people were losing money in the market. So that is often a turning point for a market when producers are selling below cost. So we'll see if the price stabilises in coal. So watch this space. Wanted to follow up on Ramelius Resources. Again, we focused on this one because of its continuous disclosure issues when it was announcing its results, but didn't announce the 10-year review it had done of one of its main mines, and then that dropped to, about a week later, and the share price tanked, and then they said they were going to fix up the problem by acquiring another company, Spartan Resources, and that dropped about a week later as well. So, I've debated whether it's just sequencing and that they were trying to do everything correct by continuous disclosure, or whether they should have announced things earlier than they did, and I guess we will never know. But Stock Doctor took the view that they would take them off their star stock list. And to quote from their email about it, following a review of recent events surrounding gold producer Ramelius Resources, we have decided to remove the stock from our star growth stock universe. And this is going back to the 19th of March, by the way. On the surface, the acquisition of Spartan Resources makes strategic sense. Spartan's key assets include the Never Never and Pepper Gold deposits, which are part of the Dalgaranga project, as well as a standalone Rebecca Road project located 150 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie, etc., etc. Dalgaranga is situated just 65 kilometres from Ramelius's Mount Magnet Mill, offering potential operational synergies. However, we believe the risks outweigh the potential rewards. Spartan is not profitable, meaning Ramelius is taking on a company that will immediately weigh on financial performance rather than contribute to cash flow. RMS has announced a $2.4 billion acquisition of Spartan Resources through a share-heavy scheme of arrangement, significantly diluting existing shareholders. And Ramelius's latest Mount Magnet mine forecasts plan production of 140 kilo ounces per year, about 20% below previous estimates. The total capex has increased to $823 million, far exceeding the prior $420 million forecast. In addition, RMS plans a $95 million expansion at Mount Magnet to 3 megatons per annum, but throughput is expected to drop to 2.5 megatons per annum long-term due to harder ore from Eridanus, one of its other mines. This has sparked earnings downgrades and raises concerns about cost control. And lastly, Stock Doctor's comment is management credibility. RMS failed to disclose key operational shortfalls alongside its financial results 3 weeks ago, forcing investors to digest both the dilutive acquisition and a weaker production outlook simultaneously. This has undermined confidence in management's duty of disclosure. So they kind of agreed with what my thoughts were on Ramelius. However, the market isn't, because the share price is up from its lows. I think it's about $2.38 now. I know you have a question from Ed about continuous disclosure red flags, so maybe we can expand on that when we get to questions. But got some thoughts on that. But let's wait until we talk about that.
Okay.
I was going to talk about
What's
Helia,
next?
but that was part of Ed's question, so I'll leave it till then.
Okay.
Lastly, from the Results Digest, NZM, New Zealand Media, NZME, I think is its title. Their results were good, or better than expected anyway. Share price up 12% following the announcement. And the local papers over in New Zealand said media company NZME has reported a full-year net loss after taking a non-cash write-down of $24 million on its publishing assets, along with a drop in underlying profit. The owner of the New Zealand Herald and various radio stations, including News Talk ZB, said there had been a slower than anticipated market recovery of its community's publications, though the write-down did not affect its cash flow or operating profit. Key numbers for the year 2024 compared with a year ago: net loss of $16 million versus a $12 million net profit. Revenue fairly stable, $345 million versus $340. Underlying profit reasonably stable, $54 million versus $56. Expenses up a little bit, $296 versus $290. Final dividend flat. Despite the challenging economic conditions, the company said operating revenue was up 2%, with net debt at the middle of its target range. Digital revenue growth helped boost the overall result, with One Roof revenue up 51%. So One Roof is like a domain or a real estate.com, which is part of this group. And I think that's where the prize is, much the same with the Channel 9 company here owning Domain, which is in play at the moment. I think if I skip down here a bit to focus on that, one of the analysts in New Zealand said they'll look at the potential separation of One Roof to a separate business, an independent board as being part of it. I think it would still clearly be part of NZME in the short to medium term, but I think all options are open as to the review and where the long term takes us. Actually, that was the CEO. He goes on to talk about that. So, et cetera, et cetera. There's been a lot of activity, corporate activity with this company. So at one stage they were trying to merge with Stuff, another New Zealand news provider, and online space in New Zealand. And there was something in the article from 21st of March. This is about, the headline is Response to Speculation Regarding a Potential Transaction Involving Stuff. This is issued by NZME. NZME is aware of speculation in the market that NZME has been in discussions with Stuff Limited in relation to a potential transaction. And NZME confirms it has had discussions with Stuff since late 2024 in relation to the potential acquisition of digital and print assets with the Stuff mastheads business. The strategic rationale for any transaction was the acceleration of One Roof's revenue and audience, particularly in Wellington and the South Island, etc., etc. It goes on to say that those discussions have been put on hold, partly because of the regulator taking an interest. But then out of left field, another article about a Canadian billionaire lining up shareholder support to roll the current board of NZME. And so, again, quoting from local press, the Canadian-born billionaire seeking to replace the board of media firm NZME is deflecting on the question of whether he would respect its editorial independence. This is from a quote from the head of the Electrical Trades Union over there. Jim Grennan is the Canadian billionaire seeking who owns 10% of NZME, seeking to roll the board, and he appears at least within striking distance of garnering sufficient votes at the company's AGM on April 29 to seize boardroom control of the firm for himself and 3 other directors he has nominated. Grennan has said he wants NZME, which owns the New Zealand Herald and about half the country's commercial radio stations, to appeal to a wider political spectrum. One shareholder who is backing Grennan is Troy Bowker, a wealthy Kiwi who has been a vociferous opponent of a capital gains tax. Grennan has said the main driver for the attempted boardroom coup is dissatisfaction with the company's operational performance. Matt Booker, portfolio asset manager at Australian investor Spheria Asset Management, which is NZME's largest shareholder with a 19% holding, appears to have accepted that and is anticipating Spheria will support Grennan's resolutions at the annual meeting. He says, anyone who thinks that he's not there to make money for himself and the rest of the shareholders will be kidding themselves, Booker said, noting Grennan had invested nearly $20 million of his own shareholding. So it's, I guess, I watch this space. It's been on our buy list on and off before as well, so people might hold it in the portfolios. Might be in for a bit of a rocky ride going forward the next month anyway, but pay attention to your alerts, I guess. Reading between the lines of that quote from the ETU asking questions of Jim Grennan, I suspect that he wants to shift the editorial a bit to the right compared to where it is currently.
I'm just looking this guy up. James Grennan lives in Auckland. He's Canadian-born, moved to Auckland in 2012. According to this article in Stuff from earlier in March, the Gibbons Road property he owns is one of the most expensive in the country, with a homes.co.nz estimate of $14.6 million. Trying to work out what he made his money in. Do you know? You looking?
No, I don't. Oh, don't. Sorry.
He's the founder and advisor of Tom Capital Management in Canada, which started in 1995. The company largely takes interest in oil and gas, financial services, manufacturing, and real estate sectors, according to its website. He was also the company director of The Centrist until August 2023. The news website said its purpose was to present underserved perspectives and challenge mainstream media. Gee, underserved perspectives. I wonder...
He might be the Joe Rogan of Auckland.
Yeah, more like the
Bruce Social.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Oh, look, I don't know. I'm just drawing from what I've read, but no one's come out and said he's going to move editorial to the right. But that seems to be the colouring of the comments that are coming out, allegedly. And Canada New Zealand has had a lot of influx from North American billionaires who see how it is a safe place to hunker down if there's a problem in the world. They call it the bunker strategy. It's to decamp to New Zealand and build a bunker for when the end of the world comes. And I think from memory, I read somewhere the current government was now cracking down on that and stopping overseas people from purchasing expensive homes in New Zealand.
It's just the Shire. They've taken over the Shire. It's all the Hobbit houses that they're going to hide in. Work for the Hobbits. Or did it? I'm not sure. I fell asleep in Lord of the Rings. I'm not sure if the Hobbits survived or not. Don't know.
Yeah, I think they did.
Okay,
and
interesting.
Smorg's gold or something? Or Smaug, I think.
Me.
Yeah.
The most boring movies in all of history. I can sit through a 3-hour bonkers Bollywood film, but I can't sit through Lord of the Rings. It's just not enough dance sequences in it, maybe. What else? RBA meeting today?
RBA meeting now, so we should be able to Google their result fairly soon. Most people think it's going to be a hold, even though there's enough economic data to suggest there's a rate cut coming, as inflation is back in the RBA's range at the moment. But the RBA will be loath to change rates during an election campaign, which would be seen as being political.
According to the Fin, the Reserve Bank has held the official cash rate at 4.1%, as widely expected.
There you go.
Yep.
Ever since the RBA, I think they raised rates in the 2007 federal election, which was seen as the end of the Howard government, and a vote by the RBA on the economic management of the Howard government.
Anything else?
No, just the pulled pork.
Well, I had a couple of other notes left over from last week. IDA, I don't think we talked about them last week. They were on the top of our buy list last week.
Really?
And I'd never really heard of them before. No. I went to pick them up. Just a bit of background. I'm just pulling them up on Stock Doctor. They are Indiana Resources Limited. They are a rare earths company, primarily focused on advancing exploration tenements, including gold and base metals options in South Australia, Central Gawler, Creighton Province. But when I was going to add them to a portfolio last week, I saw this in Stock Doctor from October 2024. The securities of the following entities will be suspended from quotation under Listing Rule 17 from the commencement of trading on the 1st of October 2024 for not lodging the relevant periodic report by the due date. If the report is lodged between the closure of the Market Announcements Office on the 30th September 2024 and the imposition of the suspension, the entity's securities will normally be reinstated to quotation on the next trading day after the suspension is imposed. They were reinstated on the same day. But in terms of our recent red flag discussions vis-a-vis reporting, I was thinking if a company can't even get its financial report in on time and gets threatened with suspension, is that a bad sign?
Oh, I think it probably is, yeah. I'm not sure if it's a red flag. I'm just looking up have you checked it for a qualified audit? Because that's often the reason why accounts are put in late, because the auditors won't sign off on them. Just looking for that now.
Don't know if I did go that far with them.
No, they'd give it a clean bill of health.
Who does? We do?
No, the auditors do.
Oh, you've pulled it up already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know, man. With this reporting stuff lately, anyone that's like tardy with even just getting their financial report in, let alone continuous disclosure, I'm thinking it's a bad sign. I think we need to put a penalty score in for when we're doing the quality assessment, right? We're trying to assess the quality of the management.
Yep.
Not being able to get your financials in on time and having to get threatened with a suspension from quotation isn't a good sign that management knows what's going on. We're able to run a tight ship.
Look, I agree with you, and it's a bit of a moot point with IDA because they're in a trading hold again today, or from
really
from the 31st of March. What was that? Yesterday. Yeah. The difficulty I'm having with all of this is that, from a corporate governance point of view and continuous disclosure, it's not good. But if you look at the share price, it dropped after that, but it's going back up again. So when do we take it off the naughty list, I guess is where I'm trying to work out. Well, I'm trying to work out.
It was placed in a trading hold yesterday at the request of IDA, pending it releasing an announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Is it a second byline, like a Josephine mechanism?
Well, this is getting okay. So this is the question that Ed's asking following Helia's drop in share price when they announced that the Commonwealth Bank was negotiating with a vendor to replace the Helia as the provider of mortgage insurance to lenders, and the share price dropped dramatically. But a few days before that, the CEO sold a whole swag of shares. So you can't really ping Helia for continuous disclosure on losing the contract because they flagged it last year and then they announced it as soon as they could. But the fact the CEO sold shares beforehand, I think, is a bad look and a red flag for me. Ed compares it to Qantas when Alan Joyce sold his shares. And if you go back and look at Qantas, that was a trigger for the share price decline. But they are now back on the buy list as well with a new CEO, some 18 months since the shares were sold. So my thought has been to red flag them if the CEO sells a swag of shares, especially if it comes before an announcement of bad news. We're probably going to be selling on the downturn because there are far quicker fund managers than we'll be at selling out. So like if you look at Helia, it dropped 20 to 30%. As soon as the news came out on the same day. But at least we're getting out because of that as being a red flag. The question in my mind is when do we get back in? And I had thought when it becomes a buy again, so you follow sentiment. But I was burnt in this reporting season by FMG, who we red flagged last year because of CFOs leaving and the CEO leaving. But then it became a buy again just before its results, and it all became a buy briefly, and then the results came out and it cratered. So that wasn't the right time to buy. It was still really a red flag. And if you look at Ramelius, and if you adopt the same sort of strategy, you would have sold out at 220, and now the shares are around 240. So, and it's a buy the whole time. So I'm really not sure. I'm sure of. I think we should red flag continuous disclosures or corporate governance issues, breaches. The question for me is when do we take the red flag down? And I'm not sure of when that is.
When the CEO is replaced?
Possibly.
Because it's a integrity and character and professionalism question of the management, really, isn't it?
CEO/chairman, I think, because in Fortescue Metals case, it's really Twiggy Forrest who's still there, but the CEO left and the CFO left. So you can't really, if you use the CEO replacement there, it's not really helpful.
And you're a big fan of Twiggy for years.
I was,
You've said lots of nice things about Twiggy.
Yeah. Well, I haven't.
And then people
recently.
started dropping off.
Maybe that's the red flag. As soon as I nominate someone for sainthood,
Well, don't you have like my light announcement? Don't you have a pulled pork announcement?
I do. Yes. So, like your light announcement, I think you put together a list of pulled porks, and I've been tracking its performance versus the STW, and it's now doing double market since
What
we
are
started
you doing
tracking
it
that.
from the date that you do the pulled pork?
Yeah, but what it's a buy and hold
Yeah,
portfolio. I haven't tried to trade it using sentiment or anything like that.
yeah.
So
So
there's
it's just
plenty of
proving that the pulled pork curse is not really a curse.
short term it is, long term it's not.
So we need a like if you do a pulled pork, 3PTL and Rule 1 cells cease. It's because it's otherwise you're going to sell it
Well,
as a result
you
of
got to
pulled
buy
pork
them all
curse.
because some go down 60 or
Right.
70% and some double. So it's
The pulled pork portfolio, the PPP, the
Mm,
pulled pork portfolio,
mm,
buy and hold, long-term strategy, ignore the rules.
yeah. Yeah, go back to being an old
Oh,
school value investor, Warren Buffett
yeah,
value
yeah,
investor.
yeah.
Yeah,
Buy and hold forever.
yeah,
And then a GFC will happen and they'll all
yeah,
go down by 50% for 10
mm,
years.
yeah.
Stay there. Don't do I just said, people. I was kidding. That was a joke. Don't do that. But good to know. Anyway, back to EDS and HLI and red flags. So look, I do think this is a thing. Quality at value. I mean, again,
Yeah.
my understanding of the quality side of this is we're using consistently increasing equity and other metrics like that to try and get an indication about the quality of the management because we want to buy shares in companies that are being relatively well run. If there are indicators, objective indicators, which aren't necessarily numbers based in this case, but we have objective indicators that the management is perhaps a little bit shoddy or shonky, we should steer clear of it.
I think you're right. Where I'm struggling is, okay, here's my thinking that the red flag is a sell and perhaps a do not buy, but when do we take the red flag off? That's the area I'm struggling with.
Well, when the management changes and proves itself. Yeah, I
And
don't know.
sentiment returns.
Well,
Because sentiment never
yeah,
went away for Ramelius. It became a Josephine, but it's back to being a buy, for
yeah.
example. Yeah. And look,
But
corporate governance is always an interesting discussion because there are people out there who are successful and experienced who hate corporate governance. Typically, it's an owner-founder. And
yeah, it's a bit
then
like
you've
an
got to
Elon Musk. I
yeah,
shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to explain myself to anyone.
yeah, exactly. And I'm just going to move fast and break things. So
Mm, mm.
it's always a tough one for me. Do you follow what the business does, or do you follow what the person running the business does, or are they interlinked? But I like your idea of putting a negative score in the buy list. So if it's a good company with good prospects, because like if you look at Ramelius, right, it's going to be hard for anyone not to make money during the gold boom we've been having. So if we red flagged Ramelius and we waited for a change of management, it wouldn't bother me because there are plenty of other gold mining stocks on the buy list to buy. But are we, cutting our nose off to spite our face? And we had another listener ask the question that they were a Spartan Resources holder, and what do they do when Ramelius takes them over? Should they keep shares in Ramelius or should they sell? If it's a red flag, you'd have to consider selling. But Ramelius share price is now going up again, so should they not do that? That's where I'm having a dilemma.
Yeah, but like all of our rules, like our Rule 1 rule, our 3PTL rule, they don't work 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're designed to minimize risk and to get us out of situations where 6 out of 10 times it could statistically go bad, right?
Yep. No, you're right.
So this is just fits that kind of mindset. I think this is just like a CEO or a CFO leaving. It's just an indicator of problem at the mill.
Yep. And I
Hey,
guess,
there's a problem at the mill. No one expects a Spanish Inquisition.
okay. So look, I accept that. And bad news often travels in threes. So if these companies have had one hit, they'll probably have other hits, and they'll do some other silly things. So happy to red flag them. The question then is, how do we code it? And what's even the rule for the red flag? Is it a breach of corporate governance? Is it as specific as CEO sells before bad news comes out? Is it not obeying continuous disclosure in our opinion? What are the rules around it, I guess?
Yeah.
Or do we just leave it loosey-goosey? It's bad corporate governance as we see it.
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's an evolving process that we monitor, and we'll probably end up with a couple of categories. Like we have sudden CEO resignation, sudden CFO resignation. We have qualified audit.
Sudden independent director's resignation.
Yeah, okay. Sudden independent director's resignation. And we add these to the list, like CEO sells stock before bad results come out. Lack of continuous disclosure, timely continuous disclosure, and like IDA, inability of management to get their results published in time.
Yep.
We end up with a dozen or so indicators that there are problems at the mill. And
so we're getting a checklist on corporate governance.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to do it, is to score it somehow. I'm
just going to call it the mill list.
The mill?
Problems
at the
mill. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Problems at the mill. Because, and you made a good point before, it's not like there's usually a lack of things to buy.
Yeah.
Why buy shares in companies where there are management concerns when there are other options? We're not Buffett. It's not like we've got $3 trillion we have to invest and, there's just not a lot of options. I mean, there is for you. I mean, you have a smaller list to play in than most of us, but for most of us, there are always a dozen options each week that you can buy, and except in times like right now, where
everything's a Josephine.
Everything's down. Well, they're having a down day, if not a Josephine. I had to sell a couple of things in the US portfolio today, and there was nothing to buy because everything's having a down day, or was when I ran it on Friday. So, I would say just steer clear of companies with red lights flashing above them, and buy something else.
And okay, so do we take them off the buy list, or do we just note it on the buy list that we put out?
Well,
let people make their own mind up. Because people have different views on corporate governance too, right? There are fans of Elon Musk and there are critics of Elon Musk, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I think people can make up their own mind. I keep a running list of companies that we've discussed because I have memory of a goldfish, so we can talk about something on a Tuesday and by Wednesday I've forgotten that we talked about it, and I'll buy it. So I have to keep a running list of notes in my buy list that pop up red flags. Like IDA, for example, I put something in for IDA last week. I think we can keep a list. I can add a list to the buy list of companies that we've red flagged and why we red flagged it, and we can review from time to time if they come back up on the buy list. Like that'd probably be the way to do it. So if we red flag it, and I have a note in my buy list that will pop it up if they appear back on the buy list 6 months later, and there's a red flag against them dated from 6 months prior, and go, okay, well, let's review it and see if it's time to remove the red flag or not.
But we think the red flag was removed when either the chair or the CEO has been replaced.
Well, depending on what the red flag is, but yes, in these sorts of things that we're talking about, serious corporate governance concerns, we'd want to see that the company has addressed those in some way. So has it been raised at a shareholder meeting? Has the CEO or the chairperson been replaced because of a result of corporate governance concerns, and the new incoming administration has said that they're going to put together a crack team to improve their position on this stuff? Or is it...
Which was certainly the case at Qantas, so that works there. Again, the question in my mind is it, does the CEO lose their job over the kind of disclosure Ramelius Resources had?
Probably not.
No. So, and does he learn from the mistake?
Probably not. So the red flag just stays on.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. Again, and we might miss a couple that do well.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the key, isn't it? We give up any upside, which might fluke out of this, but just being able to invest in quality companies.
Yeah, we QAV is supposed to be a rational investing system, right? It's not rational to invest in companies where we have red flags over the quality, integrity of management. That just doesn't seem like if you as a private investor, as a angel investor, if you saw somebody, if you had a startup that wanted you to drop $1 million in and they couldn't do their financials on time and they couldn't report, and the CEO was doing deals behind your back and not telling you about it and selling stuff, you wouldn't tolerate that. You wouldn't keep sinking money into the business, would you? You'd go, "Whoa, this is, I'm not." Your shackles would go up, your spidey sense would go off, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm not sure I want to be part of this operation." It's the same thing, just writ large, right? You just don't want to be involved with people that are shady or dodgy, I think.
Or incompetent.
Or incompetent. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I'm convinced. So we got various governance issues for red flags, and we don't take the red flag off until the key person is replaced.
All right. I'm going to make a note before I forget, because I'm going to have to write this into the Bible.
That's an interesting discussion. I've been thinking about it a lot for the last couple of weeks since reporting season. So it's good to have this with you and be able to nut out some rules.
Yeah. Well, I think it's and it's interesting to me how, what's going on here? It's interesting to me, just the evolution of QAV, seeing these things crop up, become a problem. Okay, this is something that we need to probably manage in the system.
And it's sad because really ASIC should be managing this, not us. They should be hitting these companies hard and saying, what's going on. And also too, I think Helia will be interesting because I checked before and I haven't seen any announcements about the CEO's share sale, but it's interesting if that CEO retains their job after that. If I was the chair of Helia, I'd be asking some pretty serious questions of a CEO who did that.
All right. I had one more thing. Speaking of TPG, which I did add to the possible light portfolio a week or so ago, and then it immediately went below its 3PTL. I gave it a few days grace. It seemed to be recovering. Then it turned around and went backwards today. So I did suggest that people let it go. Couldn't hold on. It's too far below its 3-point trend line. But I did see a note, I think it was last week, TPG welcomes ACCC clearance of sale to Vocus. TPG Telecom, the country's third largest telco, says the number of mobile customers is rising quickly, with a new network sharing agreement with Optus helping expand its presence into regional areas. And it's selling a big chunk of something to Vocus. $5.25 billion deal to sell most of its fibre networks to the Vocus group was struck in October, but then it just got regulatory approval last week. I think Vocus has been on our buy list from time to time too, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I find it interesting them talking about mobile customers rising quickly. Where does that come from? Like, is it just teenagers that are getting mobile phones? I mean, who doesn't have a mobile phone?
Yeah, good point. But it's and who has a landline these days? With the other question.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was talking to Chrissy about this earlier, like talking about people that are still AI skeptics, and I was saying, I still remember mobile phone skeptics.
Mm-hmm.
I remember having my first mobile phone in the early 90s, and people calling me a wanker and saying that they would they would never own a mobile phone. I don't want people to be able to call me after hours. Well, I go, it's got an off button, right? You can turn it off. You don't have to answer it. Oh, the expectation is that you'll always be, really? No, I don't answer my phone if I don't want to take a call. Yeah, I remember people being skeptical about the internet, and they were never going to get an email address, and they were never going to have a website, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it just surprised me that the mobile customers are rising quickly. I was like, where are they coming from?
That's a good point.
Teenagers, kids.
Does Fox have a mobile phone?
No, God, no. But the twins got one when they started high school, I think, because they were catching a train to high school.
Right.
If they had an emergency, I think they had one between them because they were always together, but it was, and it was a hand-me-down, a second-hand one from me or their mother or something, Chrissy. But I think most kids sort of tween level and up have a mobile phone for the same reason these days. If they're, Chrissy and Fox went to a Pokemon tournament on Saturday. Fox played in the regional Pokemon tournament.
Wow. Okay.
And they caught a train into South Bank, and then they called me at like 8 o'clock and said, train stalled, got towed back to the station. Can you come and pick us up from blah, blah, blah station, because their car was parked over here. So, when you catch public transport, there are emergencies and stuff like that. You need to get in touch with somebody. I remember Alex wasn't big in it. I remember Alex not really having phones or stuff like that when she was a teenager.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was racking my brains then trying to think when we gave her one. She would have got one when she was a teenager, but she really wasn't big on social media. And I think she was put off a lot by what the boys did in her class. I didn't really go into it with her, but she just thought they were idiots and were doing stupid things, so she just stayed away.
Too smart, Alex. Too smart to get sucked into all that. All right. Well, that's my TPG story.
Vocus was the one. Sorry, Vocus was on our buy list, and it was acquired, so it's one of those companies that were taken over when it was on the buy list.
Okay. It wasn't as gone. Well, TPG, I don't know why, but it was a buy, and then its price has been going rapidly backwards for the last week. So if it's still on the buy list today, it's probably a Josephine.
Well, talk time.
Actually, it's a 3PTL sell. It's not a Josephine. It's a sell, so it's not on the buy list anymore. Just to clarify that. That's why I sold it. Yes, pulled pork. Santos. Pretty sure you've done that before, Tony.
I have, but it's about 2 or 3 years ago. I looked it up.
Weren't there some problems with Santos back then? I seem to remember it had a taint. There was a Santos taint.
There was, and I'm going to say perhaps it was with the merger with Oil Search, one of the other ASX company.
That sounds familiar.
Big oil company based in PNG, which I think has worked out. Anyway,
Right.
It's back on the buy list, as is natural gas as a commodity, in now a 3-point trendline buy, but oil isn't. But Santos, even though it's an oil and gas company, is probably 80 or 90% gas and 10 to 20% oil. So it's mainly LNG which drives the performance of Santos. It's the second biggest oil and gas provider on the ASX, Woodside being the biggest. what else can I say about it? They're an international company based in South Australia. They have facilities in Western Australia, Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, and Alaska. They've got gas fields in the Cooper Basin in South Australia, big liquefied natural gas facility in Gladstone, where they send the LNG overseas to Southeast Asia. A lot goes to Japan. And they're also proceeding with a proposed domestic gas project in Narrabri in New South Wales. So international company, quite large. Interesting history with the company. So Australian based. Back in 1949, two school friends from Adelaide, Bob Bristow and John Bonnython, thought that oil could be found in South Australia, and they confirmed that in the following years. And in 1954, Santos was incorporated. And I didn't notice until I saw this article. Santos is an acronym of South Australia Northern Territory Oil Search. Did not know that. And one of the people responsible for naming Santos that way was Sir Douglas Mawson, who joined the inaugural Santos board. And he was part of the decision to add Northern Territory to the Santos name. So otherwise it would have been Santos. They listed in October 1954 on the South Australian share market, back when the states had their own boards, as they were called. And because they listed in 54, it means they turned 70 last year as a listed company. In 63, they saw their first significant gas discovery in the Cooper Basin in South Australia. And in 66, they also discovered gas in the Moomba gas field, which was in the Cooper Basin, but a large-scale discovery. It gave them the confidence to put a pipeline in from the Cooper Basin to Adelaide. And in 1969, natural gas was piped from Moomba and arrived in the Adelaide suburb of Blair Athol in South Australia. So the first pipeline to a city of natural gas occurred. In 1970, gas and crude oil was discovered in what was called Tirrawara 1. Until then, the opinion was that the Cooper Basin would be only a gas resource. However, it was the first time that oil had flowed to the surface from a well in South Australia. In 1982, Santos put a pipeline from Moomba to Stony Point near Whyalla in South Australia, and that allowed Santos to start exporting oil and gas, both overseas and around to Geelong for refining. And that port was called Port Bonnython in honour of the founder of Santos, John Bonnython. In 1984, they sent their first load of LPG via the vessel called Genkai Maru to Japan. In 2002, they discovered gas in fields in offshore WA in the Northwest Shelf. In 2006, they discovered fields in Timor-Leste, also in offshore Victoria and offshore in East Java. And all those fields, started production in 2006. They were discovered earlier. In 2008, Santos signed a gas agreement with the PNG government. In 2015, the Gladstone LNG plant went online, and that saw the first shipment of LNG leaving Curtis Island near Gladstone and delivered to South Korea. And that was partly supplied with Santos's Cooper Basin gas. So the Gladstone port really opened up the export channel for LNG in Australia, particularly for the Cooper Basin. 2021, Santos completed a merger with Oil Search, combining two industry leaders and enhancing the company's growth portfolio and PNG operating business. Also through the merger, Santos gained its first North American project, one called Picker, in Alaska, where it now has 3 projects drilling and exploring for gas and oil in Alaska. In 2024, Santos announces the successful startup of the Moomba CCS, which is the carbon capture and storage project, and they commissioned the first CCS project to put CO2 depleted gas back into the Cooper Basin. So I guess it's a watch this space space to see how that rolls out. So that's the history of Santos. Latest results. Wasn't a great year for Santos. All metrics were down compared to the prior year. Production volume was down 5%. Revenue was down 9%. Prices for both gas and oil were down 3%. Earnings per share down 11%. However, analysts are forecasting growth of 12% for this year, and that's guided by Santos's management. But I do put an asterisk beside that because it's highly dependent on operational execution across a large complex business and also the movement in commodity prices, which is difficult to forecast as well. But looking at the QAV numbers, it's definitely a value buy. ADT for this company is $55 million, so it's available to buy for anyone who's listening. Stock price is $6.75. The buy price is only $6.73, so it's just nudged above its buy recently. And it's also close to its sell price of $6.58. So some people might want to wait for a bit for the trend to resolve a little bit more before they buy, but it's hovering above its buy line and a little bit higher above its sell line. It's below consensus target by 15%, but above IV1, which is $2.85, and intrinsic value 2, which is $2.89. Net equity per share is interesting. It's $7.69, so we can buy this company for less than book value, which makes it a value buy. Yield is 5.3%, which is strong, but we don't score it for that because it's not quite over our threshold. Stock Doctor rates Santos as a star growth stock, and also, of course, that means its financial health is strong, and it also has a steady financial health trend. Stockopedia aren't as kind. Santos ranks as 69 for quality out of 100 and only a 4 out of 9 on the F score. It does rank higher, 80 for value, and only 85 overall, so not quite up there on Stockopedia. I'll call out return on equity for the company as only being 7.6%. I know some listeners focus on that. It's not part of our checklist, but that is a fairly low score for ROE. PE is 12 times, but it's not the highest or the lowest in the last 3 years, so it gets a score of 0 for us on that one. PropCAF is 4.78 times, so that's where we're finding it being supported on our checklist. We're buying it for less than 5 times operating cash flow. Even though forecast EPS growth is 12%, the PE is reasonably high, so forecast growth over PE is only 0.98, so we can't score it for the PE growth ratio. Doesn't have an owner-founder anymore. It's 70 years old as a company. It is a new 3-point trend line upturn, so we score it for that. Equity is also consistently increasing over the last 5 years, so we score it for that. So all in all, 12 out of 17 for quality, or 71%, which is probably fairly similar to what Stockopedia had, but a QAV score of 0.15 boosted by the PropCAF on the company. I want to highlight some risks with Santos. Guy called Kevin Gallagher's been running it for a long time, very experienced operator in the gas field, but he's been there for 10 years, and so is likely to have a successor in the short to medium term announced and appointed. And so succession planning and succession execution, I think, is a risk for this company. Whether the next person is as well regarded as Kevin remains to be seen. I think carbon capture and storage I have down as both an opportunity and a risk because it's the first plant. There aren't many operations around the world to look at for this, but if it does work, then it actually solves a lot of problems for the fossil fuels industry, and there's an upside for Santos if it does work. I'm highlighting business complexity as a risk, and if you go through the annual report and see everything this company does and the various joint ventures it has, and there's exploration and drilling for new resources and development for that. There's capital intensive nature of doing that. There's keeping all the existing stuff, pipelines maintained and running in 4 large divisions. And then there's commodity hedging or commodity risks to take into account. It's a complex beast. So business complexity, I think you got to call out as a risk for this. 2 other risks: climate change legislation. I think is a risk. So if for whatever reason there are stronger pressures applied to the oil industry and the gas industry around carbon emission, that could affect the profitability of the company. So that's got to be a risk. And that could be pressure applied to the banks that lend it money, for example, which has been happening. So that's an issue. And the last risk I'll highlight is potential sovereign risk, because they are in JVs with the PNG government and they are in JVs with their exploration in Alaska. So it wouldn't surprise me if there ever was a change of government in the US that and the next government shuts down drilling for oil and gas in Alaska. It's always been a contentious issue. And it also wouldn't surprise me if the PNG government at some stage turns around and wants to renegotiate the deal.
I like the way you said that. If there is ever another government in the US, yeah,
yeah, drill
like
baby drill.
You just like slid through on that, yeah.
Yeah, drill baby drill certainly helps them at the moment, but that may change. So that's Santos back on the buy list.
Wow. I'm not even going to look at what price it was when I sold it last time, because I don't want to know. Okay, well, let me see. I think that's everything on the list. I did have to sell 2 US stocks today. Zim, 3PTL'd.
Pulled pork from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. This is before you told me about the pulled pork curse.
Yeah, just put it in
destruction.
The bottom drawer. Just buy it, put it in the bottom drawer. Wait for a couple of years.
Yeah, and R&W was another one I sold, and another 3PTL. And as I said, like I couldn't find anything to replace them with, so I'm just going to hold off. Well, on to After Hours. Joe 90. Wow. I've watched a couple of episodes. So for people who don't know Joe 90, made by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson in the late 60s, people behind Thunderbirds. Similar sort of a thing, super marionette puppets with electronics in their mouths to move their lips. Insane sets. And it's the craziest plot. It's about a 9-year-old boy, Joe, whose father, quote unquote, adoptive father, who's a mad scientist, uploads all of his mind into this computer that for some reason is a big spinning globe. And then sort of Joe, the kid, wears a contraption on his head in the form of glasses sometimes and has all of his father's knowledge. And then their American friend, Uncle Sam, voiced by an Australian actor, as it turns out, basically turns him into a spy. So there's this kid running around in the first episode stealing a MiG from the Soviets and flying it away. But then it turns out that didn't really happen. They're just like, that's a sort of assignment he could go on. But then he runs around and just starts killing people and blowing stuff up. He's this 9-year-old boy who's a spy. I watched a documentary about it on YouTube last night, which was fascinating. It didn't really work as a show. No. I mean, Sylvia Anderson said, it turns out kids don't want to watch shows about kids, which I don't think is true. I mean, one of Fox's favourite shows, and if you've never seen this, I highly recommend it. Anyone with parents of kids, if you haven't seen Odd Squad, you ever heard of Odd Squad?
No, I haven't.
Canadian show. It's a few years old now. I think it was like 2015, something like that. It's basically about a bunch of kids that run a spy agency. And it's made by the Fred Rogers Foundation, Mr. Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really well written. The kids are fantastic. It's funny. It's silly. And it's educational. So it's kind of like Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers. They're teaching basic concepts of maths and literacy and science in it, but in the structure of kids doing a spy, like in order to solve some sort of mystery. It's a bit X-Filesy. They have these mysteries that they have to go and solve. but they're like a spy organization, some secret organization that they have to go solve things that are odd. Odd things are happening, and they're the odd squad. But it's always they have to solve a math problem or some sort of a problem involving geometry or basic science or whatever. But it's very, very funny. Fox loves it, and we love it. It's like one of those kids shows that are as entertaining for adults as they are for kids. Anyway, so I'm not sure about the premise that kids don't like watching shows about kids doing stuff. But anyway, Joe and I like the sets are insane. Like the amount of work that must have gone into building the sets and the puppets and all of the ancillary things. Like there's Uncle Sam in the first episode, he's got a little pot of coffee, he's pouring coffee and drinking coffee, and like somebody had to build all of these things, and it must have been incredible.
Oh, yeah. A lot would have been reused from Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds. I remember seeing, well, I watched Joe Knight as a kid. They had some of the puppets the same one and going, hang on, that one different. And he wanted to pass.
Yeah, reused. Yeah. Just put a different eyebrows on them. And
exactly. Yeah.
Uniform on. Yeah. Anyway, so that was good. That was good fun to watch.
Yeah, good. Well, after dissing the studio last week, I watched the first episode. I got it confused with something else that was a similar sort of, I think it's called The Franchise. Sort of premise about life in the Hollywood studios behind the scenes. But loved it. Loved the studio. Have you seen it yet, the first episode?
No, I haven't.
Or any of the
caught
series.
Up with it yet.
No, it's good.
No.
Good. And largely good because of the cameos. Scorsese's in it and Steve Buscemi's in it. Yeah. Loved it.
Taylor, as I think I told you last week, Taylor and Amy really loved it. He said he thought I'd love it.
Yeah. No, very good.
Taylor called me from LA yesterday. He had spent the afternoon with the cast of the new Superman movie and James Gunn, who's running all the DC films now. So he was with Rachel Brosnahan, who plays Lois Lane. Did you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Mrs. Maisel? No. Oh, it's a great show. I can highly recommend The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Yeah. Her, Nicholas Hoult from The Great and About a Boy. You know Nicholas Hoult? He's in Renfield. No. He was Renfield in Renfield.
Oh, okay.
He was in Fury Road. He's in everything right now. Mm-hmm. He plays Lex Luthor in the new Superman. Nathan Fillion from Firefly was there. NoHo Hank from Barry was there. Did you watch Barry?
No.
The Bill Hader show? Oh, God, Barry was such a great show.
Okay.
Anyway, Taylor was just hanging out with all these celebrities yesterday. He said it was interesting.
Didn't get
and
Hunter
he's put himself
No,
not yet. But Hunter's working on his visa. I told you Taylor's got an apartment in LA now, right? He just went and furnished it and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it is. And he's been there for a month. He's supposed to be coming back on the 10th, but then I said to him, I was talking to him, he goes, I think I'm going to have to push that out. Something's come up. I got a meeting. I think that's the thing now. Like, he's just booking things when he's there. I don't think he's ever coming back. I think it'll just be, I got to stick around for another week. I got to do this thing, and I got to shoot this thing next week with one of my guys. And, I think I've lost my son to LA.
You've lost him? Well, you got
a while. Yeah.
Hopefully it's a 3-bedroom apartment in LA, so you can go and crash there when you visit.
True, but there'll be a lounge. Yeah, we'll go crash there. But yeah, we got a place to stay in LA, which is nice.
Yeah, that's good. He's doing well. Taylor's always been very impressive.
Yeah, and it still shocks me, Oh, I'm autistic, as it turns out. I'm getting a T-shirt that says, I'm not an arsehole, I'm just autistic. Chris has been telling me for ages she thinks I'm autistic. And really? I did one of these online analyses last week, and it came out that I'm mildly autistic, so that explains a lot. So then I got my boys to do it, and they came out with far lower scores than me. And I said to Taylor, "There's no way you're less autistic than I am. You're the chess nerd who sits there and plays chess constantly. That's got to be a sign of autism."
That's a bit of OCD, though. It's not really autism, is it?
Well, I don't know. I said the questionnaire for autism should just be, Do you like playing chess? Yes, yeah, you're autistic. You've got to be a little bit autistic to like chess, I think.
This wasn't like one of these take a test and then qualify for the NDIS, was it?
No, unfortunately, I'm not getting any. I'm not getting paid for my autism or my brain damage. Yeah, and I read the Ipcress file. I told you I finished that last night. I told you before we started recording. Really, good recommendation. Really enjoyable. Sort of bonkers book, but I liked it a lot. Yeah, got sucked into the style of it.
Very different from the movie too.
Yeah, right. Which I tried to find, but I tried to see if that was available on any of the streaming networks, and it was like BritBox or something you got to have. It's not available on any of the ones that we have here. I do love a Michael Caine film, though.
And Gordon Jackson from The Professionals.
Oh, yeah. I remember him. He was good.
He was good. But different plot about a particular piece of tape that brainwashes people. Michael Caine's the Russians are brainwashing people, and Michael Caine has to track it down.
That's the same plot as the book.
Oh, okay.
They're brainwashing people. That's what Ipcress stands for. It's like psychoneurosis, something brainwashing. It's an acronym for this brainwashing process that the guy who sold out to the Russians is using to try and brainwash all of Britain's leading scientists and getting them to become communists or something.
Okay, maybe it's closer to the plot thing. Oh, I thought it was very different. I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, I got to track it down.
But good. Yeah, Ipcress File's a great book.
Yeah. And I discovered some great new music this week. Some friends of mine at Kung Fu were making fun of me because I didn't know any Blink 182 music. You ever get into Blink 182?
I did, yeah.
They were making reference. We got a little chat group and they were referencing Blink 182 and I was like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like,
really?
You're so out of touch. Anyway, so I did listen to a bit of it, and I was like, it's fairy bread punk music. Like, give me the Stooges or MC5. Yeah. I like my. I said I like my punk like I like my women, dirty and nasty. And so one of the guys said, "What about Transplants?" So apparently, the drummer from Blink 182 had a band after they broke up called Transplants, which is far more my style. So I've been listening to a lot of Transplants. Really,
I haven't heard them.
Hard sort of punk with a little bit of hip hop in it, sort of hip hop punk, really thrashy, noisy, angry, political, sort of cross between maybe Rage Against the Machine and I don't know, Clash or something. It's good. Anyway,
sounds like
a bit of reggae.
Sounds like Tom Morello.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. I mean, it's not as metally but the same sort of vein as Rage Against the Machine. Sort of, well, they're more metal punk than sort of metal hip hop rather than punk hip hop, but same sort of attitude, and a little bit of Rasta sort of reggae in there as well. Anyway, it's good. And a band called The Distillers, which I got out of that too, which was a female-led girl punk. Well, I think there were guys in it, but the lead singer's a girl who's from Melbourne, apparently. They're an American punk band. I think they're defunct now too, but girl who came out of Melbourne, Brodie Darley, I think was her stage name. So I'm impressed by between Amyl and the Sniffers and Distillers, like girl punk coming out of Australia. It's great. Yeah, surprising. Can't believe how well Amyl and the Sniffers are doing in the US right now. They're killing it over there.
Are they really?
Yeah, hugely popular. And I don't know how it translates. Like, they're like just the most bogan Australian act going, and the Americans love them, apparently. They totally dig it. So, yeah, good for her.
Oh, that's good. Have you checked out Tom Morello's album called Black Spartacus Heart Attack Machine?
No. Was that a solo or one of his like supergroup spin-offs?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think it was a solo.
Right.
Yeah.
Black Spartacus what?
Heart Attack Machine. Apparently, Heart Attack. Apparently that's what Woody Guthrie had written on his guitar. He called his guitar Black Spartacus. because it was black,
Right.
and it was the heart attack
Right.
machine. They used to have this machine kills fascists on the front of it.
What's that got to do with Spartacus?
It was called Black Spartacus. He used to call his guitar Black Spartacus.
It's great.
Mm.
No, check that out. I love Tom Morello.
Yeah.
Tom Morello's highly original guitarist.
Mm.
I sort of mourn the breakup of Rage Against the Machine. Like I've often said, like, where is the angry political rock and roll these days?
Mm.
You know, I thought that they were great, and I read a thing not that long ago with who was the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine? Anyway, his name escapes me. But he was talking about how he thought they would be able to change things with their music, and then they didn't, and so he kind of got depressed and gave up singing angry rock and roll, I think.
Pretty true, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the show. You got any horses running this week, TK?
Yeah, Baffleck runs on Thursday night, following from his second place last Thursday night.
Which is your birthday, right? Thursday?
Friday, I think. Yeah, Friday.
Oh, yes. Today's Tuesday. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you get a win.
Interesting thing about horses like Baffleck, I'm appreciating it again because it's been a while since I've had one that does this. But a 3-year-old that can go out over distance, I think this race is 2,500 metres. There's just not many of them around. So like the race on Thursday and the race the week before paid down to 10th place, and there were 5 horses in the field. So it's like line up, guaranteed payout. Doesn't matter how good or bad you run. It's just
I understood about 2 words of what you just said, but I gather that's a good thing.
It is if you own a 3-year-old that can get out over distance. And I tend to, I guess I'm a bit of a value investor when it comes to buying horses too, but most of the breeding industry in Australia is centred around trying to find precocious 2-year-olds who can sprint so they can win the Golden Slipper or the Magic Millions or whatever. And you pay a lot of money for those kinds of horses. And of course, 90% of them don't do any good, but you paid a lot for them. But if you buy a horse which is probably not going to race until it's a 3-year-old or it's a distance horse, you get them cheaply, and you got to pay their expenses for another year until they start earning, but then you get the field to yourself. It's just great. So, Baffleck's one of these horses, which is terrific. Cha-Cha Changes runs on Sunday. She had a win last Saturday at Geelong, which was great. She's racing in Sale, I think. And Perfect will probably run at Flemington on Saturday as well. So I could have 3 racing this week.
Precocious 2-year-olds that can sprint.
Mm-hmm.
What's a precocious 2-year-old?
Precocious means that they're an early runner. So a lot of horses don't run until they're late 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds.
Why?
Because they're young, they're babies, right? So a horse's lifespan is usually about 20 odd years, 25 maybe. So, they're, as a 2-year-old, it's like being a good runner when you're 10 or 8 as an adult. Most people aren't better at it until they're teenagers at least. So a precocious 2-year-old is a 2-year-old that can race early, which is not that easy to do, and do well. And then, sprinters, for some reason, Australia's racing prize money has evolved more towards sprint races than distance races. It used to be the other way around. Melbourne Cup and Victoria Derby and the Cox Plate maybe would be the biggest prize money races, but now things like the Everest and the Magic Millions are up there as well, and they're sprint races.
And so a 2-year-old that can race is good because you make money out of them faster?
Because yes, that's right. So a lot of people like 2-year-olds that can race straight away because they're earning from an early age, so you're not paying out to the trainers and getting nothing back for it. But I think that's traded away in the price you pay, that people overpay for those horses. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention that I've been watching, I'm only halfway through it again, but is Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood.
Hackman. Clint Eastwood
remake, which I saw when it came out, and I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it at the time, and I haven't seen it since. I started it this week, holding up really well.
Is it? Ah,
Yeah, and Morgan Freeman in it too.
right.
Him and Clint and Hackman, and Richard Harris.
Right.
Richard Harris is English Bob, I think he's called. Some British sort of troublemaker, fast gun, who has a run-in with Hackman. But Hackman, man, damn. So, just so good, so powerful in his performances. He'd do that thing where he'd sort of get a glint in his eye and a smile and then say something sort of cold-blooded with a smile on his face. He's one of those guys that could just look terrifying but with a smile on his face. You know?
A fake smile.
You knew. Yeah, but it kind of comes across as warm, but then, he's about to punch you in the jaw and pummel you into the ground, but he's enjoying it. He's enjoying the build up of the tension when he takes you down, or he's enjoying getting your gander up, hoping you're going to pull a gun on him or you're going to take a swing at him or something like that. Yeah, it's just great performance.
He was a good Lex Luthor. Probably the best.
Well, I don't think so. No, that was terrible.
He was good.
No, I think it was a low point of his career.
No, I think he was great.
I think he did good. He did a lot with what he had, but those films were, at the time they were okay, I guess, but they haven't aged well. They're kind of campy as all hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But he was good. Him and, who was the guy, Otis, his sidekick?
Yeah.
Ned
Guy
Beatty.
from Deliverance.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Ned Beatty.
Ned Beatty. Yeah. He was great.
Yeah.
Again, sort of campy as hell in those films, but he was one of those guys that always entertaining to watch in the 70s and the 80s. Ned Beatty. Yeah.
They were great. Yeah. SAS Rogue Heroes. Have you seen that yet on SBS On Demand?
No.
Yeah, we're enjoying season 2 at the moment.
Is that a fictional thing?
Well, it's based on a true story, so they point out that it's true-ish, but they take a fair few liberties, like playing AC/DC and the soundtrack behind them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's almost like a Guy Ritchie does SAS history.
I've been trying to talk Chrissy into starting Slow Horses with me, and did you see Gary Oldman on Stephen Colbert in the last week or so?
No.
He had him on. Actually, I think Colbert went to Gary Oldman, went to the set or something to interview him about Slow Horses. And I gather that his character in that farts a lot in the show.
Yeah.
So Colbert was like, have you ever wondered if any of the other characters you've played in films, the performance could have been improved by making them fart loudly? Whoa, shit. Thank you. Sorry. And so he had spliced together all of these clips from Gary Oldman films, playing Churchill and in the Harry Potter films and different things. But they picked these moments when there's the character says something, then there's a break, and then he'll just look at another character, then you just hear this squeaky fart come out or something. And Oldman was just laughing so hard, had tears pouring from his eyes while he was watching this thing. It was beautiful to see. But yeah, I want to get into that. Particularly having been reading Le Carre and Len Dayton now, I want to get into that sort of thing, because you said it was similar in sort of the approach.
Definitely. Yeah, because the whole thing is these are the rejects from MI5. They're in a different building called Slough House, which is how they get called Slow Horses, and Oldman's old school and on the outer with the current people who run MI5, even though he's a drunk and burps and farts and all the rest. It's all an act, really. He's still sharp as a tack.
Right.
But he uses it to his advantage. And
he does a Columbo.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and then there's a few other rejects who join him, and it's actually a really good premise. Yeah. But he loves getting into, Rolls Royces because he's being under pressure from someone who's rich and famous or a lord or something, and then he farts in the car before he gets there.
Nice.
No,
Big
good.
fan of Gary Oldman.
Yeah, great actor.
Oh, yeah, what a great career. Yeah.
Oh, Sid and Nancy. That's probably the first time I saw him.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Okay. Yep.
Did you ever see that? Him and
I did.
his
Tom
face?
Stoppard's first play.
Yeah.
Mm.
With Tim Roth. Him and Tim Roth.
Oh, right. Yeah. Still, yeah.
Before they were famous. Like before they worked with Tarantino, or he was in True Romance or whatever. Yeah. Before Sid and Nancy, I think. Around about the same time as Sid and Nancy. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, great career.
Okay.
And The Professional.
Oh,
I said.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And The Fifth Element.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had that period in the 90s where he was just the ultimate crazy bad guy.
Yeah.
When he was dating or married to Uma Thurman and was a massive alcoholic, and he his mental health was not good, I think, for quite a long time. But he pulled out of it, I think, luckily. All right. Thank you,
Okay.
TK.
Thank you. Good
Have
to
a
chat.
good birthday.
Yes, thank you.
Let me know when you receive your gift, if you'll know.
I will,
and
thank you.
I'll explain it
thoughtful.
next week.
Oh, it needs an explanation, doesn't it? You provide the instructions next week, okay?
Yeah. All right. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Bye.
Have a good week, everyone.